Hello and thanks for joining us for our late night newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. We start tonight with yet another horrific Islamist terror attack, this time in Bangladesh. Army officials there say all 20 people taken hostage and killed by their captors in an attack on a cafe in the capital Dhaka were foreigners, most of them Italian or Japanese. An Italian news agency says up to 10 Italians may have been killed. The Japanese government says 7 Japanese nationals that had been in the cafe are unaccounted for and are feared dead. Officials in Dhaka say many of the victims have been killed with sharp objects. The local Daily Star newspaper reported that the terrorists tortured anyone who was unable to recite the Quran. 6 attackers were shot dead and 13 hostages freed by security forces when they stormed the restaurant. A suspected militant has been captured alive and arrested. The Islamic State militant group says it carried out the attack. This latest attack follows dozens of murders over the past few years of bloggers, gay activists, academics and members of religious minorities blamed on Islamist militants. South Korea has become the 21st permanent member of an informal group of creditor nations known as the Paris Club. It's significant as it marks the first case of a non-advanced economy joining the prestigious group. Kwang Hyun has the details.
From one of the poorest nations in the 1950s, Korea is now globally acknowledged as a creditor country after joining the Paris Club on Friday. The club is an informal group of creditor nations that seeks to find workable solutions to payment problems faced by debtor countries, mostly emerging economies. Korea's membership came at the club's meeting to celebrate its 60th anniversary in Paris and marks the 20th country to join the group. The club's permanent members include countries like the US and Japan, as well as most Western European nations. And Korea is the first non-advanced economy to put its name on the member list. Korea's Vice Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok expects its membership to act as a catalyst in encouraging other emerging creditors to join the Paris Club. Because it's an informal group, the club does not hold official statutes, but the group has been setting rules and principles in global debt negotiations. It also works closely with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank that allows Korea to easily access information about debtor nations. Korea's foreign credit stood at roughly $710 billion as of the end of last year, almost doubling the amount posted in 2008. This has raised the necessity for Korea to be prepared for default risks in emerging economies. Seoul expressed its will to join the group last month at a summit between President Park Geun-hye and her French counterpart, François Hollande, in Paris. Kwang Hyun, Arirang News.
Now, North Korean coal is reportedly being sold on China-based online shopping malls, possibly indicating a violation of UN sanctions that severely restrict trade with North Korea. Voice of America reports that a number of Chinese firms are selling various types of coal and briquettes imported from North Korea through companies like Alibaba. The going rate for a ton of North Korean coal is currently $200. South Korea's intelligence agency estimates that North Korea's coal exports have tumbled by 40% since the UN sanctions were implemented in March. The measures were in response to the regime's nuclear test and long-range missile launch earlier in the year. China pledged just last month that it would strictly implement the UN sanctions on its long-time ally. And South Korea's intelligence agency has reportedly told Parliament that it arrested a man on espionage charges in May for sending information on domestic affairs to North Korea. Sources say the National Intelligence Service showed video footage of the suspect's arrest at an internet cafe in northern Seoul to the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee. They add that the suspect is a pastor who pretended to be a human rights activist seeking to help North Korean defectors. The man is believed to have sent reports to North Korea on multiple occasions, but the content of that information has not been disclosed. It has emerged that 2 South Koreans murdered last month while aboard their fishing boat in the Indian Ocean were stabbed a combined 23 times by the two Vietnamese crewmen accused of killing them. Korea's Ministry of Public Safety and Security says an autopsy conducted by the National Forensic Service showed the captain had been stabbed 15 times, the engineer 8 times. Officials say the 43-year-old captain and 42-year-old engineer both had deep gashes all over their bodies. They are both assumed to have died from blood loss, but the final autopsy results won't be out for another couple of weeks. The Vietnamese suspects, both aged 32, were accused of murdering the Korean fishermen in waters near the Seychelles. Late last month, they were brought to Korea to face trial. In Britain, two female Conservative Party MPs have emerged as the favourites to replace David Cameron as Prime Minister following the UK's decision to leave the European Union. The odds-on favourite, Theresa May, has reportedly already won the backing of senior members of her Conservative Party. Andrea Leadsom, who campaigned strongly for Britain to leave, has also won the backing of dozens of Tory MPs. Michael Gove, Liam Fox and Stephen Crabb are among the other names in the running. On Friday, Britain's Finance Minister, George Osborne, that man there, admitted that the Brexit result means he will miss his target of achieving a budget surplus in public finances by 2020. He said the British government had to reduce uncertainty by moving as quickly as possible to a new relationship with Europe and being super competitive. Korea's two largest automakers, Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors, are enjoying a pretty bumper 2016 in the United States. Hyundai Motor says it sold slightly over 374,000 units in the US in the first 6 months of this year. That's a record high. Kia's sales to date stand at around 328,000 units, another record and 5.6% better than at this point in 2015. The automakers were boosted by the success of their crossovers, Hyundai's Tucson and Kia's Sportage. Now, it is said that Korea's traditional chicken and ginseng soup helps Koreans stay energized during hot summer days. And now, after clearing a major regulatory hurdle and a few words of praise from Chinese celebrities and even Premier Lee Ka-chang, Samgyetang is set to hit store shelves in the world's second largest economy. Our Park Se-young tells us more.
This is Korea celebrating its first shipment of Samgyetang to China at the end of last month. After a 10-year effort, the nation was able to send over a combined 20 tons of the traditional chicken soup. Once customs are cleared, the Samgyetang pouches will be on shelves at supermarkets in major cities like Shanghai.
We expect these shipments to China will pave the way for Samgyetang to be introduced throughout the world.
After years of negotiations, Korea and China agreed on new quarantine rules for the dish last October. Then earlier this year, 5 domestic processing plants, including Harim, completed the registration process for producing Samgyetang for export to China. The industry forecasts exports will reach $3 million this year and jump to 5 times that amount in 3 years, surpassing existing Samgyetang markets in the US, Japan, and Taiwan.
Our goal for the Chinese market is to export $1 million worth this year, $3 million next year, and to eventually get up to $10 million.
The Korean government plans to support Samgyetang exports through promotional efforts at the state level and in the private sector. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's modern architecture reflects the course of the nation's history and its inheritance as well. A number of century-old buildings are still highly cherished and now stand as valuable sources of education. Kim Hyun has more.
Numerous buildings that were built during the period of Japanese colonial rule have been well preserved in Korea. The Tapdong Catholic Church, located in the metropolitan city of Incheon, stands as the first cathedral in the northwestern port city. The external walls of the building, made with a mixture of red brick and granite, reflect the typical architecture during the Middle Ages.
The Tapdong Church, which was first built in 1937, is relatively well preserved. Because of the building's beauty and sturdiness, we designated it a historic site.
The First Bank of Japan, which was first established during the late 1880s, also represents Korea's living history. The building's Renaissance-style dome in the center of the roof and stained dormer windows on the sides bear the footsteps of our past. Now, the building is being used as a venue to hold various kinds of exhibitions.
This structure is living proof of Korea and Incheon's modern history. It is now an educational venue that shows us how it was 130 years ago.
There are more than 20 such old buildings just along Korea's port city of Incheon. City officials around the country are continuing efforts to preserve and make use of such architectures as a foundation of education. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
And finally, as we like to do at this time on a Saturday evening here in Korea, we are going to take a look at the weather, and it is a rather overcast but warm night across much of the country. We will see a few scattered showers here and there, but nothing too heavy tonight. Sunday will be another cloudy day in Seoul with some light rain in the evening, but since we are in the middle of monsoon season here in Korea, it would be advisable to keep an umbrella with you, particularly if you're in the south of the country, as showers are expected there. Highs nationwide on Sunday will be in the mid to high 20s. With that, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, those are stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.